Welcome to the Careers in Music podcast. My name is Caleb J. Murphy. In this episode, we have Aaron Espe, a Nashville-based songwriter artist whose songs have been on ABC, CMT, and in TV shows like Grey's Anatomy and Orange is the New Black. Taylor Swift even caught wind of his song Making All Things New and added it to her playlist Songs Taylor Loves. And one of his EPs reached number 7 on the iTunes singer-songwriter chart. He's also the author of On Songwriting, Practical Tips and Insights from a Decade in Music City, which has garnered praise from Grammy-nominated songwriters. In this conversation, we talked about co-writing, getting a publishing deal, and how to start your career as a songwriter. We're going to jump into the conversation in the middle of talking about writing songs with others. Let's get into it.
It's an intense few hours, especially if it's a new person. Mm-hmm. So you have to go from hello, nice to meet you, all the way to finishing a song, which is you get used to it once you move to town, but for any, I don't think it's a humanly natural way for the brain to like emotionally and
then you're diving into like a song about like deep stuff and like, it's a lot.
Yes, well, and it's partly my fault, but so some people are co-writing and they can keep it pretty light. Mm-hmm. If you're writing bro country or you're writing, I don't know what, something a little more upbeat pop, but in general, people come over and I start asking them a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Like I did with you. All of a sudden we're in the deep end talking about it's people have told me I'm a little bit like it's one part therapy, one part co-writing. Yeah. Which is great. I don't mind that at all. It just takes a little more of a toll. Mm-hmm. So I didn't realize it until, about 8 years later. I'm like, be like an emotional zombie.
I was wondering like how therapists separate that. I don't know. I couldn't do it. It's a lot.
No, that's a great question. I've actually wondered that as well. And I have no idea. Actually, maybe I should just go to therapy and see if I can get their cheat sheets or their like, how do you keep going? But I think there's probably in every field you got to take a breather or have your rotation crop or whatever. Yeah. And I have learned to do that to some extent, but especially when I was in my earlier publishing deals, there's pressure you kind of have to just churn, put your head down and just do it because it's what's expected. And you do have a contractual obligation, but it's actually not very many songs contractually. I kind of say it's like if like driving the speed limit in Montana, most people aren't doing that because it takes too long to get anywhere. And if you're just writing your contractual amount here in Nashville, you're probably not going to get re-upped. And typical deals for me were like 100% songs a year. So if I wrote it entirely myself, it'd be 15 songs, but you don't do that when you're in a publishing deal. You're mainly co-writing. So that's at least 30, and that would be minimum. So it ends up being about like, you're good if you're around 100 songs a year.
You mean writing 100 songs and then giving those to the publisher?
It's not all. Yeah, it's you deliver as they're ready. So it works out to about, it's not like 2 a week because this town kind of shuts down a little bit during the summer. And then after December like when the holidays hit, nobody's really co-writing that much. You could probably match it with the school year. Mm. Yeah, you just kind of, when you're starting it, you're just you and your publisher are just trying to figure out where you're a good fit and what you do well, which takes a while because they had me trying to write country for a long time, and completely sucked. So
That is a question I had. What are kind of like the main benefits and downsides of having a publisher as a songwriter?
well, I would say it depends on what you want to do. So if you want to be a songwriter who's writing songs for other people and trying to make a living at it, then that's very difficult to do just DIY. I mean, you would have to have all those relationships in place. So a publisher expedites the relational, like connecting you to the people who are looking for songs. Not everybody is. Some people are cutting their own songs. Some people are cutting songs other people write. It depends on the artist, and it definitely depends on the season because right now a lot of artists are wanting to at least co-write their music. So they're either in the room with you or they find a song that they like and then you end up cutting them in on the publishing. That happened recently with me where the person, actually one of the members of the group was with me, but they wanted to cut in another member who was more of a, you're basically trading you're trading leverage, depending on they want the song or at least some ownership. You need them to, if you're just a songwriter, not the artist, you're needing them to service it. It's not like it's going to do anything if they don't use it.
Right.
Reason number one, you need connections. I kind of describe it as like getting a Costco card. You want to go to Costco, you got to get the card. And once you have the card, you're in the building, but it's not like they're just going to deliver your groceries for you to your door. There's a lot that's still up to you to do. You got to work with the people you've got, but it's like access.
Yeah.
And then you usually don't sign to a company, you sign to a person. So for instance, in my first deal, it wasn't like I was wanting to sign with this particular company. It was that I knew a person who liked what I was doing, and they were the song plugger for that company. And so his name was Greg Gallo, still around now, but for most people, you sign to like a champion, and then you hope that they stay with the company. Otherwise, you're a bit like a stepchild if they leave, because then somebody else comes in, they don't know your work, and you're still stuck in a contract. So you sign to get in, to get the network, and then you also sign it to, and this is going away more and more, but to get some money, some breathing room, so you can just focus on writing, because it is pretty much a 9 to 5 type situation. It's not 9 to 5. You're constantly writing, but well, for me, I was also demoing everything, which isn't expected, or it wasn't in the deal, but it was a little bit expected. So you're at least 50-hour weeks for me, and you need to be compensated for that. But it's with the market being as saturated as it is, the deals are less and less, and pretty dire for somebody who's wanting to do it, just doing it and needing a paycheck.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many people coming in who have no kids, no risk, and they're happy to do it for free. Network, money, and and this goes with the network thing, but there's a credibility thing where you can kind of bypass a lot of red tape just by having a deal in place that sort of vouches for you and speaks on your behalf.
Yeah.
So, when you're independent, you have to kind of toot your own horn or figure out how to get people to do that for you. When you're in a deal that's kind of already set up, you don't have to waste so much energy on proving yourself to get in rooms. You can kind of let your point person do that, or the writing just happens more easily. So they essentially fill up your schedule. Like when I first got my deal, one of the first steps was, okay, give me your give me your Google Calendar, add me to your Google Calendar, and then I'll get you started, get you some rights on calendar, and then you just wake up one morning and your calendar is full of the names you don't recognize, and you just start showing up. So without a deal in place, that you're left to your own scheduling, you're left to your own proving yourself, and it's just harder.
So if there's someone looking to like make a career as a songwriter, would you suggest they try and go to get a publisher?
One, I would first ask them if there's anything else they could picture themselves doing, and if they have to absolutely do this, then I would say it depends on what season of life they're in, because and I can overcomplicate this very quickly, but I first say, let's go 30,000-foot view. Like, what type of, do you know who you are yet, and what type of life you want to live, and your core values? Mm-hmm. Most people in their early 20s don't, so they just want to, like, how do I get a deal and get going? But I would say if you have, short of like, if you don't have a community already of people you're writing with, and you think your songs are, pretty good, or they can compete, or at least you're off to a good start, I would at least move to probably Nashville or LA, depending on what type of lifestyle and what type of music you're in. LA still, is more pop centric. Nashville, obviously more country, but they're both it's all becoming intertwined. Publishing is just talking about the intellectual property, the writing side, as you know. So it's like, it's very, very difficult right now for publishers to make back their investment, because streaming does not pay equally to the publishing side versus the master side. Mm-hmm. It favors the record labels. So if you're going to write and just try to make it as a writer, it's really, really, really difficult, number one. And you need a single, you need it by somebody big, and essentially we're playing the lottery. We're playing the lottery anyway, but then to like do that, it's just very difficult. So you want to be a really good writer. You want to be in the area. You got to be in proximity. But then you also have to have other rare and valuable skills, whether that's, I've known people who first started, they were like film videographers, and they were first just kind of like, shooting music videos for bands, but it kind of gave them an in, or something besides songwriting or adjacent to it, like whether it's you're a stellar guitar player or whatever it is. That will definitely help. To use whatever. It's very rare that any publisher is going to just sign a person on their talent. Mm-hmm. It's very, very hard. They usually sign, from what I can tell in my experience, they sign you based on your talent. Yes, you have to be talented, but that's sort of a given. Mm-hmm. But also who you're currently writing with, and kind of the circles you've started to develop, because they're not just going to like start you from scratch unless you're like the publisher's nephew or niece, and so they're looking to like on-ramp you from wherever you are to but not from like square one. So for instance, I was working at Starbucks, and I just started asking people to co-write. And I started writing with writers who had publishing deals, writers who didn't, and then because I would demo everything, And at that point, it wasn't as common. This was like 2011. I was just trying to do everything in Logic just to learn,
Right.
and because we needed a working demo of something. So I would just say, I'll do it. And then I would record it and put my spin on it. And that helped me because, you know, it would go to not just me, but to the co-writer and their circles. So some of the people I was writing with, their publishers liked my voice. It wasn't necessarily like they're like, oh, this song is incredible. It was like, oh, we like kind of what you're doing here, and we think it's different from stuff we've heard. That helped me get in, because I wasn't writing songs that were cuttable. I was kind of still writing like almost like straight from my diary, so to speak.
Well, and that touches on the question I would ask you. How does a song normally come to you?
Sure. I have a few different places where I'm pretty sure I'll get at least ideas. It's when I'm walking. It's when I'm driving. I've been doing this long enough to be like, okay, I should at least have some be ready for those occasions. But it just, it starts with an idea. It can be anything. It could be the way somebody looked at you, or the way something somebody said, or how they phrased it. I just wrote something down, and last night I was watching. What was I watching? Was it the Olympics? Or can't remember. And I don't even remember the phrase right now. I just know that I wrote it down.
Yeah.
But you have to know. Check engine light's not a great way to say it, because it's not like something's wrong, but it's like a light goes off. You're like, you have to, as a songwriter, it's your responsibility, I think, to at least capture the idea somehow. Yeah. So it doesn't have to fuel you to grab the guitar and write it all down right then, but you guys at least have to capture the idea. And for me, I can't usually finish the ideas right away. That worked when I was in my 20s, but with kids, as I'm sure you know, like you have to. I have to have set times when I'm working on music, and then I bring the ideas to that setting and time, and work on the ideas then. But yeah, I mean, for me, it always starts with an idea. Something tickles you, something just makes you feel something, and you write it down. You're like, you never know if it's going to be a song or not, but you know, it's the Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
So, for someone who's like maybe not written a song before, but they want to, where would you suggest they start when it comes to like actually sitting down and writing a song?
Whatever they're listening to is probably their best teacher for right now. I only know really from guitar and piano, because those are the people I was listening to singer-songwriters when I was starting, so it wasn't heavily track influenced. If the genre is singer-songwriter, or something where you can have a handle on what's going on in it, you can at least have a starting point. Like, if they don't already play an instrument, I would encourage them to play an instrument or learn, and they don't have to learn much, but they do have to learn. I would encourage to learn a few songs or a few chords on the piano or guitar. If they're like way more into MIDI and making beats and stuff, and want to do that's fine. You can some people, it's called top lining, where you kind of create the track. And if you're more into tracks and creating a beat and stuff, then you go from, you take that and you top line to it. So you kind of make your own made up lyrics and melody over the top of it. But if you're starting from guitar or piano, then I go back to just the greats. You got Joni Mitchell, Paul Simon, you got Bob Dylan, you got all these people. You got Bill Withers, it's simplified, at least from a guitar or piano standpoint. You can at least break it down a little easier. I think learning other people's songs will help you to. I wouldn't go straight from not knowing how to write a song to writing a song. I would go from going from not knowing how to write a song to learning other people's songs. And that way, each time you learn a song and you can play it, you know it pretty intimately. So you know the decisions that were made going into it. You know where the chorus is and where the verses fall, and you know when they're following the basic pattern and when they break it.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to learn their favorite musicians' songs. You know, as long as they're not Bohemian Rhapsody or something like Sgt. Pepper, or
Right.
you know, something that's really difficult to deconstruct.
Yeah, or like a Jacob Collier song or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, just to interrupt real quick, if you want to learn how to start your career in the music industry with guidance from experts who are doing what you want to do, make sure you check out careersinmusic.com. Okay, back to the conversation. I wanted to ask you if you could sort of explain, you already have touched on this, but like what a songwriter actually does, and you could even talk about like what a day looks like for you. I think that would be helpful too.
If you're doing it for a career and with a publisher, it's more on a schedule. For the most part, you're just living your life and paying attention, and then writing stuff down. And then I would say depends on the season, but when I'm in a co-writing season, it is an 11 o'clock start time. You're either going to somebody's studio or living room, or they're coming to your studio or living room, or whatever, doesn't really matter. And you're presenting some ideas that you've been collecting, probably prepared a little bit for the write. You establish what excites both of you, and there's a chance your publisher gave you some direction on what they're looking for, or you're writing with an artist who needs material for their next project. So you kind of you don't just like start writing. You kind of like acclimate to what would be the best use of time. If you've co-written a lot, then you're very used to just diving in. But if you're not, then it takes a little longer you might take more time, drinking coffee and sharing some stories. Yeah. Usually starts around 11 here in Nashville. Co-writes go from anywhere from 11 to 5 to 11. The goal is to finish a song, but sometimes 80% of the time you'll finish, 20% of the time you won't, and then you have to schedule another one. But a lot of songwriters in town have kids. I think that's partly why it starts at 11 and go until early evening, is people have families, and that songwriters are usually out late going to other people's shows and supporting them. I would say you're writing the actual song for a couple hours. You're just going back and forth, and then sometimes you will. I've for the last, I don't know, however many years, I don't like taking a lunch. I feel like it can often just, I guess it depends on the person. I'm all about, like, if they really want to take a lunch, then we can. We have like some headway on the song. So we'll go have lunch and come back and finish the song. Ideally, I like to just keep going.
You feel like it like derails you, or you get like post-lunch sleepy or something?
Yeah, there's a bit of a post-lunch coma,
Yeah.
and because time has become more precious to me with kids, I guess that's part of it as well. It's like if we can get this in 4 hours instead of 6 hours, or if we can get this in 3 hours instead of 4 hours, I'm usually pushing toward that, at least hoping. But there's all kinds of, I mean, there's sometimes it's fun to go to lunch too and change the scenery. So you're not expected to have the whole track ready, at least in my experience. But you do need like an end of the day working demo, something that's like you can send to your publisher and be like, here's where we're at, or just something to shoot from to get a complete demo down the road, or to actually record it. At the very, very least, you'll record a work tape, just like an iPhone recording of what you have so far. Ideally, a finished song, or like pretty close. You're very drained after that. And I felt guilty for a long time for being so. Because I grew up mostly doing manual labor jobs where you're physically tired, and I'd never really felt mentally like brain tired. But yeah, I kind of got to go easy on yourself and give yourself a little break after. For me, I'm if it's afternoon, I'm picking up kids from school. I'm doing just usual stuff. But the only difference between a published songwriter who's writing here in Nashville and a songwriter who isn't published is that there's more of a like schedule framework. If you're on your own, then ideally you create that yourself. But I would say you need to be like consistently getting your reps in. And the weird part is it's a bit of a numbers game. So if I were to give you the average, like my batting average, it's it's really, really bad, but it's normal. So I think I don't know what my entire catalog is right now, but I would say the songs that actually earn money, I could narrow it down to like 10 or 15 songs in 10 years of writing songs. So I'm with a publisher called Cobalt now, and I actually retain my publishing. I stopped taking an advance from them. So I have their creative team, but I don't, they're not filling up my calendar anymore. So I slowed down in 2021, I'd say. So 15 divided by 800 is I can't do the math, but it's really, really bad. So that's why it's important to just keep getting songs to whoever can work them. Or if you don't have somebody, it's important to share them somehow. You can at least get information. Because I at this stage, I treat most of it as information, because music is so subjective that if I'm going to base it on my feelings and how I'm feeling about a song, history has told me I'm going to be wrong about 99% of the time.
That's hard to do though, because like that's where music like that's what you're kind of writing from though, right? It's like, does this make me feel something? And then you put it out and it's like, why didn't it make other people feel something to the point where it's making money?
Yeah, and I agree. But I would say that's why you wrote a song, or it's why I write a song. But to imagine, but people don't know. It can feel good to you because you're intimately tied to it, and any references you make that might be translated or not translated, but people are coming to it with their own whatever, and having to, it's the whole people see the world as they are, not how it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree that you gotta make stuff that surprises you and you feel, but I guess where I push back is you probably aren't a great source for whether it's gonna relate to other people. Not relate, but whether it's gonna hit them the same way.
Right, and it sounds like it's a balancing act. Like, how do you do that? How do you balance that? Are you changing lyrics that because you're like, oh, this would resonate with people more, or like, how do you balance staying authentic to like to also trying to make money?
Yeah, the age-old question there. For me, curiosity is my my compass. So anything that I'm curious about is like a first is for me, and that's back to ideas. It's like, she said that in a way I've never heard. Or when I start with curiosity, it's authentic. I can't fake curiosity. So I try to start there, and then as I'm fleshing out the idea, I'll make creative choices based on whether something will pigeonhole me or not. Like I try not to paint myself into a corner too much. Like if I'm thinking of a proper noun, I probably will decide to use a different noun. If I'm thinking of New York City, I'm probably just going to say city, or things like that. All of this is complicated because it depends on the genre. It depends on what you're writing for. And if you're writing just your own art, you can do whatever you want. That's what most of us do for the first few albums. And for me, it's chasing curiosity, fleshing out the idea as much as I can, but then don't use proper nouns. For me, this is for me. I think I have kind of like two areas where I can find success. One is in the dark piano, Grey's Anatomy, Blacklist, sort of ethereal world. And then there's one in the more commercial ad space that's more organic guitar. There's themes of family and wonder and home and those types of themes. Those songs are usually, I'm aware that that's giving them a better shot. If I want to, which is why I had no expectations of the Up North album, is because that album is entirely specific. And
I do also want to say, like, I feel like you were specific in that album, but like it also, in the specificity, it made it like, I don't know, there were still things to relate to even if you didn't have a paper route or whatever it was. Like, I do think, like, I think there are general enough themes in it that a lot of people could relate to it, even though you got specific. That's my take.
Thanks. And I think there's a difference between relatability and commercialability. What's
commerciality?
I relate to a lot of songs that I have no idea what they're talking about, or have never been to certain areas. But when it comes to using a song as more of a commodity to trade, you're not wanting okay, here's the difference. When you're writing, say, my album Up North, I'm writing for listeners. I'm writing for like people who are going to listen to that and be moved, I hope. When you're writing to try and make a living, you're writing for somebody else who has a boss, and you have to know who that boss is. So for me, when I'm in a publishing deal, I know my boss, so to speak, is my song plugger. My song plugger also has a boss. This person who is paying my boss's salary, and it's the GM of And you have to be very cognizant of the line, because from your song, by the way, you're your first boss, so it has to first, you first have to pass it. And then there's about 15 people between you and a paycheck. Let me just try to break it down. Like let me think of an example. Okay, my last sync was me to my creative person at Cobalt, one person. And by the way, once you get to that person liking it, you're also in the running against your own roster. It's not just like, oh, it's going to go straight from my pitch person to the music supervisor. It's going to be my person taking a look at her roster and what songs they have and giving their client, the music supervisor, the best material. So that's the third one, the music supervisor. Now, the music supervisor is working for the showrunner, who is working for the director, who makes the final call, but who knows, the director could also have a niece who just started writing songs, and that's why you can be at the very, very end, and it goes on for a while. It's between you and another song, and the other song might win just because there's too many bosses. You can't please them all.
And it's all up to a little girl to make the decision.
Yeah, it's up to. So when I'm in that headspace, I'm not thinking about relatability, because they aren't. I'm not sending my first person. Her name's Kat at this point. It used to be Greg. Kat is my new person. It's silly for me to think I just want to send Kat a song that she's just going to relate to so much and feel. Because that's not what she's listening to music for. She's listening to music to solve a problem that her client has. And she's going to be primed. If she's thinking about pitching to Grey's Anatomy or pitching for a particular commercial, she's looking for that type of music. So, hopefully she likes it regardless, but that's not her. Her job isn't to write back and say, man, I'm crying.
Yeah, right. Here's a bunch of money. Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me, and I guess a simplified way of looking at it is the graphic designer versus the artist. They're both artists, but one is working for a client, making choices based on that, and the other is making choices based on what they feel and want to do in the moment. So.
No, that's interesting. And I obviously don't have to give numbers. I'm just curious about where the majority of your songwriting money comes from, the source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could tell you exactly, because we just did this. And it used to be advances. It used to be I'd get paid directly from the publisher, and it would be a stipend. I think my first deal was $30,000 this was in 2012, $30,000 for 1 year, 15 100% songs, and then there's all kinds of if this, then this, and if this, then there are little raises depending on. My business model for the first half of my Nashville career was just chasing contracts, try to re-up for another 30,000 or 35 or whatever it was. And as I'm sure you know, that doesn't, once you start having kids, that doesn't go very far. And then I was fortunate because I would start seeing money on the master side when I'd get a sync. And that's primarily where my money has come from, is from licensing. So it was first advances and then licensing combined. And then it became, so advances you have to pay back.
Right.
It kind of sucks because, yeah, it's nice to get money, but they want your songs have to do well for it to recoup. So most publishers will they'll go in maybe 100,000 for you, depending on how you are. If it's my my experience, that's about, 3 years, a little more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, hey, this is working, this isn't working. You get dropped or you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Either your spreadsheet's doing well and you're earning enough where it's like the numbers are working, or they're like, no, it's not working. So
Mm-hmm.
they drop you. You, in that time when you're trying to figure out what to do, you're building up what's called a Schedule A. And that's just songs that you will then hopefully bring into another deal. You still keep writing, but now you own those songs, the publishing, and sign the next deal. So I would say contracts and licensing for the first 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then streaming hit and nobody was making anything. But then I had one song that started doing really, really well. And so streaming started to be an actual part of our income. And then that got me an offer from a record label because they saw that a song was doing well.
At what point, like how many streams or monthly listeners or something did you
I
first?
think I had, I don't think they were even at this point. It was 2016.
Okay.
I had a song that had maybe like 8 million, 9 million
Okay.
in a year. And Network Records saw that and they said, hey, we have this plan. We want to buy this song, not buy it, but license it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you this much money. And then there's a 2-song deal. And then I had to give them 2 records. And they had the choice not to sign those or release those. Then so it became more a master side of income earning versus just the publishing side. For a while, it was just publishing. Then it was publishing and licensing on the master side. Then it was record label on the master side. So suddenly everything that I was recording, Network had first right of refusal to. But all of this, I want to point out, is like kind of going into debt with investors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just investors because they're industry people who can actually help the chances of the song succeeding. They can help it quite a bit.
Yeah.
But still, the song has to keep doing well. Last year, 2 years ago, I was sitting with Heidi and we're like, kind of at our wits' end on, we don't want to do another deal, just go into more debt with a label. We want, like, the industry's changing. Doesn't seem like a label can do as much for artists as they used to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Same on the publishing side, but we were like running out of money.
Yeah.
And I swear, like a week later, we got a check from Network, and we would never get checks from them because we were still in recoupment. Mm-hmm. But it was that the record recouped. So finally, after all this, I would say our main source of music income is royalties and on the master side.
Royalties from licensing.
From Network, from streaming, sync, anything that Network has. They have about 20 songs.
Okay.
So we split profits with them now 50-50 since I recouped. I'd say a third of our income comes from that. A third comes from actually the publishing side, so ASCAP royalties. And I would group into the first one. The first income stream would be like mechanicals from like CD Baby, DistroKid, anything where I own the master versus Network where they have control of the master. The nice part is it's like I don't really have to do anything for that stuff anymore. It's kind of like a rental house. Doesn't have any toilets that plug.
Right.
But who knows how long that will last? It's hard to say. And then so that then ASCAP royalties, and then more and more it's becoming, I'm trying to do way more Patreon-esque stuff to be less reliant on changes in the music industry. Just be like, who is it that actually cares if I make music, and how do I serve those people best?
Yeah.
And so for a long time now, I think, and you know this, we've talked before about this, I think I tried to like serve my own little community. And I would say, you know, that's built up in the last 3 or so years. For a while, it wasn't really anything, but now I'd say it's a decent amount. But you kind of, and even now, like, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't on Home Depot's website like last week, being like, okay, should I take the night shift here and get us through the season? Or it's enough to be like, okay, we're doing this. We've been paying the bills for 12 plus years now with music. And I haven't had a real job since Starbucks in 2011.
Yeah.
But who knows, you know, like I don't have a hit song that's just a slam dunk for the next 50 years or something.
Right.
Still have to look at my resources, see what value I have to offer. Even right now in Nashville, I'm like, is co-writing the best use of my time right now? Is it, where am I seeing the best return for my time? Like,
Right.
The other thing about co-writing is that it's just, especially co-writing a song where you're splitting publishing, and the publishing isn't really making anything in streaming. It's hard to justify co-writing as a business model, because I'm not taking money from the publishers. So before I was getting paid to co-write, essentially, because they would set up the rights. But right now I'm not getting paid to co-write. It's all really just be spec work. It's like building a spec house, you know, and hopefully after it's built, you have somebody who wants to buy it.
Right. Yeah. I did want to ask you about, it's kind of an open-ended question, but like, what are your thoughts on AI when it comes to songwriting?
That's really,
it's kind of a big topic, but
I'm not worried. I don't think AI is gonna replace us or anything. I do think, like, if it's between me and AI, I think I can win between AI. But I do think another songwriter using AI could probably beat me, just based on speed, and probably based on speed, and I'm just talking commercial music now. Like,
right.
If I'm trying to, like, because it gives you a lot of objectivity, and I've played around with it where you can use it you could prompt it to say, hey, can you write a song about, you know, Caleb and Aaron having an interview about songwriting? And they'll churn it out in 20 seconds. It won't be a great song, but it'll be something. Now, if you keep working with it to, like, it would have to go deeper than that. You'd have to know, like, I would say, what would a song about these two people be about? Like, what would be the so what factor? Well, it's about, like, songwriters trying to make a living from their art. And I don't think AI is great at getting to the heart of the emotion quite yet, but I think it's the best analogy I've heard used is to treat it like a dumb intern. It can help you. Like, I imagine it being a person in the room, and I ask a question, and then they give me an answer, but I have to, like, triple check and be like, oh yeah, that's not quite right, but that helped me get a little further along.
That's funny.
But I think it is about to. It's definitely disrupting a lot. I'd say TikTok at this point is a bigger disruptor than, at least right now for Nashville, than AI. But AI is definitely starting to affect some people I know, like music houses. People I know who run music houses for, like, commercial music, where it's a little more just instrumental.
All right, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate your taking the time to do this.
Oh man, of course.
This is another song that I learned